I never said that. 3 words. And for a second you actually stop and wonder whether you imagined it. Here's what I want you to notice. You didn't miss a sign. You caught it. You felt the floor move. And then you talked yourself out of it. That gap between noticing and acting is the entire game. And almost every video on this topic makes that gap wider, not narrower. Let me show you why. There's a number in the deception research that should genuinely bother you. Across hundreds of studies, when people are asked to sort truths from lies in real time, average accuracy lands at about 54%. Coin flip is 50. That's the human baseline. Communication researcher Timothy Levine built an entire theory around explaining it. Truth default theory. And the explanation is not that we're stupid. It's that we're built to believe. Default trust is what makes conversation possible in the first place. You cannot function while running fraud detection on every sentence. So your mind assumes honesty until something forcibly triggers suspicion. But here's the part that should change what you do tomorrow. Levine's work found that some people simply have what he calls an honest demeanor, a cluster of around 11 behaviors and impressions that combine to make someone seem truthful. Steady eye contact, relaxed posture, composure, a certain confident warmth. And that demeanor has almost nothing to do with whether they're actually honest. Sit with that. The traits you've been taught to scan for are a presentation style. Some honest people don't have it and get doubted their whole lives. Some deeply manipulative people have it in abundance, which is exactly how they got close enough to matter. So when a video tells you to watch for shifty eyes, fidgeting, a pause before answering, it is training you on a signal with no reliable connection to the thing you're trying to detect. Worse, Levine's research suggests leaning on those cues actually pushes accuracy down toward chance. Reading the person doesn't work. So what does? Levine's answer: content, context, motive, prior knowledge, checking claims against reality, and asking questions designed to produce evidence, not vibes. Structure. So forget behavioral tells. Here are 5 structural signatures. These aren't personality traits, they're shapes a conversation takes. And unlike a nervous laugh, they can't be faked away by someone charming. Everyone knows the word gaslighting. Almost nobody knows the finding that makes it dangerous. In 2019, sociologist Paige Sweet published a study in the American Sociological Review, arguing that gaslighting is not primarily a psychological phenomenon at all. It's a sociological one. Her point? Gaslighting doesn't work because the manipulator is clever. It works because they have something to plug into. A power gap, a stereotype, an institution. In her interviews with survivors, abusers didn't invent doubt from nothing. They reached for a credibility gap that already existed and pressed on it. You're emotional. You're dramatic. You're the one with the diagnosis. You're the one who was drinking. Different tools for different people, but always borrowed from a story the world already tells about them. So the real sign isn't that they deny things. The sign is that the denial always lands on the same weakness. And it's a weakness that other people would find plausible. That's the tell. A liar covers a specific incident. A gaslighter builds a theme. And the theme is always about your reliability as a narrator of your own life. Listen for the shape. You know how you get. You've been under a lot of stress lately. Ask anyone. This is what you do. Notice that last one. It's already reaching for an audience. Hold that thought. The counter. Write things down, but not for the argument. You will never win the argument, and trying is how people burn years. Write it down because a contemporaneous record is the only thing that survives someone else editing your memory. Date it. Quote it. Keep it somewhere they can't reach. You're not building a case. You're building a reference point that doesn't depend on them. This one has a name, and once you know it, you'll see it everywhere. DARVO. Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. Psychologist Jennifer Freyd at the University of Oregon named the pattern in 1997. You raise a concern, They deny it happened. They attack your credibility or your motives for raising it. And then, the move, they end up as the wounded party and you end up as the aggressor. You walk in with a grievance. You walk out apologizing. Now here's the finding almost nobody quotes, and it's the reason this matters far beyond your own head. Freyd and her colleague Sarah Harsey ran experiments where people simply observed a confrontation. Some saw a version containing DARVO, some didn't. The observers who saw DARVO rated the victim as less believable, more responsible for what happened, and more abusive, and rated the perpetrator as less abusive and less responsible. Read that again. The tactic worked on the bystanders, people with no stake, no history, no trauma, which means DARVO was never really aimed at you. It's aimed at the room, at your mutual friend, at your sister, at the judge. That reframes everything. If you've ever thought, why does everyone believe them? This is the mechanism. You're not imagining the social gravity, it's a documented effect. The tell isn't defensiveness. Defensiveness is human. Anyone can get prickly. The tell is that it arrives pre-assembled and in order. Genuine hurt is messy and slow. DARVO comes out in 3 clean acts, fast, like it's been rehearsed, because functionally, it has. The counter, refuse the swap, out loud and without heat. We can talk about my tone. We're going to finish this first. That's it. You're not accusing them of a tactic. That just starts round 2. You're declining to let the subject change. Say it flatly, and say it again if you need to. The power of the move is that it needs you to chase the new topic. Don't chase. And if there's an audience, name the sequence, not the person. I notice we started on what happened Tuesday, and we're now on whether I'm too sensitive. Describing the shape in front of witnesses is the one thing DARVO can't survive. In 1966, 2 psychologists, Jonathan Friedman and Scott Fraser, knocked on doors in a California neighborhood and asked homeowners to put a large, ugly, drive carefully billboard on their front lawn. 17% said yes. Then they ran it again with one change. 2 weeks earlier, a different person had asked those homeowners to display a tiny 3-inch sticker with a safe driving message. Almost everyone said yes to something that small. When they came back for the giant sign, 76% agreed. Same request, same ugly sign, over 4 times the compliance because of one trivial yes weeks earlier. That's the foot in the door technique, and it's the most underrated thing in this entire subject. Because here's what it means for you. The request you're currently evaluating is never the first request. Nobody opens with the thing you'd refuse. They open with the thing you'd feel petty refusing. And then your own self-image does the rest of the work. Because once you've said yes, saying no requires you to become inconsistent. And inconsistency feels worse than compliance. You didn't get compliant, you got consistent. They're borrowing against a virtue. The tell is a strange one, and it's how I'd want you to spot this in your own life. You can't remember agreeing to the current arrangement, because you never did. You agreed to something 4 steps smaller, and no single step was worth a fight. Nobody ever agreed to their life getting this small. They agreed to one weekend. The counter, the fresh eyes test. Ask yourself one question. If a stranger asked me for exactly this, today, with no history, what would I say? That question deletes the latter. It strips out sunk cost, momentum, and every prior yes, and shows you the actual size of what's being asked. If the honest answer is absolutely not, you have your answer. And the history is not a reason. It's the mechanism. Come back to Sweet's research for a second, because there's a piece of it people skip. She found gaslighting is most effective when the manipulator can recruit third parties as collaborators, deliberately or not. Friends, family, colleagues, and sometimes whole institutions get folded in, until it isn't one person's word against yours. It's a chorus. Freyd calls the institutional version of this institutional DARVO, when an organization runs the same play on someone who reports harm. So sign 4 is about information flow, not words. The tell: you start hearing your own opinions quoted back to you in a shape you don't recognize. Your position, reported secondhand, is always slightly worse than what you actually said. And somehow you're always finding out what other people think about you from them. And its quieter twin: your other relationships get gently downgraded. Nothing dramatic. Your friend is a bit much lately. Your sister has never liked me. Your colleague is only telling you that because. Each one plausible on its own. Together they're a project, because every independent relationship you keep is a reality check they can't control. The counter, the direct line rule. Any claim about what a third person said or thinks gets verified with that person, directly. No exceptions, and you don't need to announce the policy. 2 things happen. Sometimes the claim was true, and you've lost nothing. And sometimes you discover the entire architecture in an afternoon. Then rebuild one outside reference point. One person who knew you before this. That's not sentimentality. It's the only functioning instrument you have when your own readings are being tampered with. Back to Levine one last time, because his research closes the loop. Real-time judgment is where people perform at 54%. But when people are allowed to do what they actually do in real life, think it over, check a claim, consider motive, ask a question designed to surface evidence, accuracy improves substantially. Deliberate, effortful processing beats intuition, consistently, which tells you exactly what a manipulator has to prevent. They don't need you to be gullible. They need you to be fast. That's why urgency isn't a side effect of manipulation. It's the delivery mechanism. Decide now. Everyone's waiting. If you loved me, you wouldn't need to think. This offer closes tonight. Don't make this a whole thing. Every one of those sentences is doing one job: removing the interval where you'd be dangerous. So here's the cleanest test in this entire video. And honestly, if you take nothing else, take this. A legitimate request survives a delay. Almost nothing real is destroyed by 24 hours. Genuine emergencies exist, but they're rare, and they don't usually come with a moral argument attached about what your hesitation says about you. The counter: one sentence, no justification. I don't decide things the same day I hear about them. Then, and this is the actual point, watch what happens next, because the response to your pause is better data than anything they said before it. A reasonable person is inconvenienced. They sigh, they reschedule, they might be annoyed. Someone running a play on you gets threatened. Suddenly the delay itself is the offense. Suddenly your boundary is the betrayal. You haven't just protected yourself, you've run a test that they cannot pass without giving up the game. Last thing, this is the reason I made this video the way I made it. In the 1960s, psychologist William McGuire proposed something called inoculation theory. The idea: if you expose someone to a weakened version of a persuasive attack before it happens, show them the move and how it works, they build resistance to it. A vaccine, but for influence. It stayed mostly academic for decades. Then it got tested at scale. A 2022 study in Science Advances by John Rosenbeek, Sander van der Linden, and colleagues ran short videos teaching people to recognize specific manipulation techniques, not specific lies, the techniques underneath them. Across experiments involving tens of thousands of people, including a real-world test on YouTube, recognition improved measurably. And the crucial finding? Technique-based inoculation transfers. Learn to spot the move, and you spot it in situations you've never encountered, because you're no longer memorizing villains. You're recognizing a shape. That's the whole reason signs of manipulation is the wrong search. Signs are a list of people to avoid. Techniques are a skill you keep. So, you will not out-argue them. Almost nobody does, and the people who try tend to lose years to it. You don't have to. You just have to stop being surprised. The reality edit. the role reversal, the escalation ladder, the audience, the compressed clock. 5 shapes. Once you've seen them, the floor stops moving. Not because they stop pushing, but because you finally know what the push looks like. Comment below, which of the 5 did you recognize first, and whose voice did you hear? I read them all, and the patterns in that comment section end up in future videos.